Hey everyone, in this episode of the Storycraft Society, we're going to be crafting the CRAGMAW Hideout caves into your story. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Garmin, and this is the Storycraft Society. Over the last couple of weeks, we crafted an awesome Goblin Arrows ambush set, and now we're ready to move on to the next section of our adventure, the CRAGMAW Hideout. After the Goblin Arrows ambush in Lost Mine of Phandelver, the players are going to track the goblins back to their hideout. So, we need a cave complex for our heroes to explore. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks on the channel. This week, we're starting with caves. So our materials list for this project is going to be XPS insulation foam, a hot glue gun, a hobby knife or an Ulfa knife, either will work, tin foil ball, sandpaper, white glue, backyard dirt. We're going to need our Black Magic Craft base coat, various craft paints and paint brushes, and then we're going to need Lexil sealant. So I made myself a cheat sheet to kind of plan out this project, and specifically today we're going to be looking at this panel, which will show you the general size of the basic pieces that we cut, as well as how thick each room should be. So we're going to start by measuring out the basic outside dimensions of each cave. This will make it easier so when I start drawing the shape of the cave that I hit the actual dimensions that the adventure book calls for. But once I've got those all measured out, then I'm just going to start freehanding the general idea of the cave. And I think the most important thing here to remember is that it doesn't have to be exact. It just needs to be close. Now when it comes to drawing room 8, room 7 and room 8 are actually connected. So I actually take the time to lay those two pieces out before I draw room 8. That way I make sure that they will line up right once everything's all cut. So when you're ready to cut them out, you can either use an Ulfa knife or a hot wire table like this, but you want to not cut on the lines that you drew. You want to cut it a little wider. You'll see in a minute. But once we have them all cut out like this, then we're going to make our thicker rooms. The XPS that I have is only 2 inches thick, so I actually need to glue 2 pieces of it together to get my 4-inch thickness for the Goblin Den, as well as the 3-inch thickness for Clarg's Cave. Once you have that traced out, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to cut those out just a little wider than what you have drawn on the XPS. Now this is kind of the reverse. For the kennel, it's only supposed to be 1 inch thick, so I'm shaving that down to being only 1 inch thick, and then I'm pulling out the hot glue and we're going to glue it together. So if you notice, the bottom still sticks out wider than the top. It is important for me to mention though, that any place where 2 caves come together or a cave and a tunnel comes together, you're going to leave that area flush. That way it'll be easier for them to meet up. Now, once we have all that glued together, we're going to take either an Ulfa knife or a hot wire tool like this and start cutting out the shape of the cave. We're going to bevel all of the edges so that they look a little bit more natural and less straight up and down in every place other than where the caves and tunnels meet up. But you can see me doing this here. Just take your time, go around each side and start to make those look a little bit more sloping and natural on the outside edges. I included this next clip just because it's important that I show you that you don't need a fancy hot wire tool to be able to do what I'm doing. You can easily do it with an Ulfa knife. Just go slow, take your time, and be safe. But you can just kind of cut away each side the exact same way that you would use a hot wire knife and end up with something that still looks really good. It just takes a little longer. So I'm getting ready to sand here, and the smart part of my brain reminded me that it's really important to wear a mask. When you start sanding this foam, you don't want all the little foam particles coming up and you breathing those. That's definitely not good for you. So be safe, wear a mask. And then what I'm doing is I'm just sanding away all of the unnatural looking edges and any top surface that needs to be sanded up to make it look a little bit more natural. Then I'm coming in and I'm starting to mark away the cutaways that happen. So right now I'm working on the Goblin Den. I'm going to use a different hot wire tool. Again, you could easily use an Ulfa knife. It just might take you a little longer. But I'm going to slowly cut away because the Goblin Den is supposed to be 4 inches thick at the top and 3 inches thick at the bottom. So I'm just going to cut away that inch, clean up the edges here, and then we'll be good to go with this section. Now we're going to do the same exact thing for Clark's Cave. Now this one's only supposed to be 3 inches thick, no 4-inch thick section. So when I do this, I'm going to actually cut it the whole way through, break all those pieces off and get it down to 3 inches. Don't worry if it has kind of a messed up top here. We're going to take that out and sand it, and it's actually going to help to make the top of our piece look a little bit more cave-like after we're done. So once you have all of those done and sanded, they should look like this. And we're getting to our tinfoil ball. You're going to want to make sure that you tinfoil ball over the whole thing. That way you get that nice dirt kind of rock texture. And when you have all those done, your arms will hurt, but you're ready to move on to the next thing. So I'm drawing out the water for the twin pools room. I'm just sketching out so I have a better idea of where I want to cut. Now, this is one of the more interesting sections of this project for me because I started using my hot knife and I thought that that would probably be the best way to do this. So I go around and I score all of my edges, and I will say that did get me a pretty sharp edge. But while I was doing it, I was thinking like this would be really hard to do with an Alpha knife. There's got to be a better way to do it, and I really wasn't happy with the results of what I got from the hot knife. So I thought, what if I could use like a lighter like this? And it turns out it worked great. The trick is you don't want to hold it in any one place for too long, but if you just slowly take your time and go around, you'll just slightly melt all the foam and get a really nice kind of pool effect. I did take that outside and sand it just to get it a little bit smoother. But once that was done, I was ready to move on to putting our dirt up on top. So I'm pulling out my Eileen's tacky glue, or you could use Elmer's glue, any kind of white glue would work. Then we're going to take some sifted backyard dirt. We're going to sprinkle that all over the top. Once you have that sprinkled and completely covered, we're going to take and pat that down into the glue just to make sure we get a nice good bond. And once that's patted down in, you're just going to tap the excess off on the top and sit that out and let it dry. When they're all dry, you're going to want to take those out and give them a nice good blow to remove all of the excess dirt that would just easily flake off. And then we're on to our Blackmagic Craft base coat. Now this is a 50-50 mixture of black craft paint and matte Mod Podge, popularized by Jeremy from Blackmagic Craft. Shout out if you're not watching his videos, you should be. That we're going to cover our entire piece in. And then here you actually see me going over the top of where all of my dirt is a second coat after the first coat dries, just to make sure that it locks all of that dirt in place and none of it's going to be flaking off on you. So now we're moving on to paint. We're going to take a dark brown and go over all of the tops of our caves. Then we're going to take a dark grayish brown and we're going to go over all of the sides, which we're going to paint to look like rock. Once you have both of those done, it'll look like this. And then we're going to start moving on to our kind of mix between dry brushing and wet brushing. I'm just taking a slightly wet brush with most of the paint taken off, and I'm just going over all of the sides with a light gray, and then going over the sides with a tan. And once all that's done, it really gives you a pretty simple but not overbearing rock texture on the outside of your pieces. Then we're going to take a medium brown and we're going to go over the top to bring out more of the dirt texture that we have on there, looking like this. And then the final thing is we're going to take and do a light dry brushing of a tan, and that should cause all of the little detail to pop. So now we're going to move on to painting the pool in the Twin Pools cave. I'm taking a dark blue-green to simulate the deeper areas, a light blue to simulate the shallower areas, and then to mix a little bit of like kind of dirt color in, I'm taking a tan. And then I'm just going to swirl this around, honestly, until I think that it looks good. There's no special trick to this. I'm not a good enough painter for that. It was just swirling paint around until I thought that it was looking decent. I actually realized that I had too much paint in the pool, So I took a paper towel and went in and blotted it all out. And then I ended up with something like this. This is fine. It doesn't have to be perfect because once we start covering it with the Lexil, which is an elastic sealant that I got from Lowe's here in the US, it will look a lot better. So what type of sealant you use, what type of caulk you use, really doesn't matter as long as it's something that's ultra clear. And then what I do is I take and I just tease it around to fill the areas and the gaps, eventually getting my pool water top to start looking like, kind of glistening pool water. And I can honestly say that this is my favorite part of the process because with very little effort, you get such a convincing water look. You just fill a section with the sealant. You slowly tease over the top and fill out the area, making little ripples and waves just kind of by pulling on the top surface. It's very easy. And then once you get a section looking good, you move on to the next section. And eventually you're left with a very convincing water effect. And once you've finished up, then you're just going to want to let that dry, and you have an awesome water effect. And there we have our caves. If you liked this video, please leave a like down below. If you're crafting along with me, definitely let me know in the comments section. I would love to hear it. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't, and definitely ring the notification bell if you want to know when our videos go live every week, which is every Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Next week, we're going to be building the tunnels for this set, and that is definitely one you are not going to want to miss because that's when this set really comes to life. But until then, I'll be seeing you.